So next, I'm going to bring up the beloved Michael Koperwas at ILM Lab.
Thank you, Edward, and thank you, everybody, for coming. So my name is Michael Koperwas. I've been at ILM. I started Industrial Light and Magic about 20 years ago. Most recently, I was a visual director for Avengers Damage Control, a hyper-reality experience available at the Void. But for this talk, I'd like to share some of the experiences and challenges that we had in creating a virtual being for Star Wars Project Porg. This was done for the Magic Leap. And at ILM Lab, we're incredibly driven by the idea of story living. And for this project, we had the opportunity to try and bring a character off the screen that we're already familiar with into the world with you, to try and live with it. Porgs are simple little creatures, but we tried to start by categorizing potential interaction areas for them with the guest, with their environment, and with other porgs. We further enumerated on those, and it quickly became this fairly complex cluster of behavior modeling. For example, if the guest moves their head while looking at the porg, then the porg tries to mimic it. If the guest crouches and kneels down, then the porg takes that as an invitation to approach. And it meant building all of these very granular systems that could hopefully create the illusion of life. Resulted in these unreal behavior trees. This is if the guest is able to get the porg's attention, the porg then approaches while maintaining its body towards the guest and also maintaining eye contact. It's these very granular instructions for seemingly simple behavior. This is the porg's brain. And you can imagine exponential levels of complexity for anything more nuanced as we're trying to recreate or create true virtual beings. Is a complex enough state machine indistinguishable from AI? Sure. But we're engineers and we try to build things that can be debugged. And something far more complex than this, I think, starts to go beyond real human comprehension. So ultimately, we're getting to the meat of this talk. We're doing this kind of stuff not just for entertainment. We're doing this because eventually we'll have something like Electable AIs. Things that are making decisions on our behalf. These are things that can be perfectly self-diagnostic, far more so than we can with ourselves. And we'll need things like Turing Tests for morality, because understanding if something is intelligent is not enough. So how do we take steps in that direction? I don't know. But for dummies like me, I'm asking everybody to try and build different sets of components, to think less like a brick and more like a motor or a microphone. Something where I can't build one of these, but I can try to do something larger with one. This entirely different class of things can be built with these broader components. And for personality, we don't even have a common vocabulary yet. In many other areas we do. For environments, we can look around, see, describe colors, surface textures, wind, ambient sound. If we look around the room, we can imagine the wireframe of the space around us. And all of this is enough to pretty accurately communicate and recreate very accurately that space. We can describe facial expressions. We can say if somebody's angry, if somebody's sad, we know what that looks like, but we can't really describe emotional states. We don't really have systems that tell us how to create those emotions. And personality, how we describe our friends, we know isn't even close to an accurate description of who they are. We'd like to think we're this complex, and you are. Every one of you is a very unique and fascinating individual. But also horoscopes are fairly believable for a reason. We can't even really reasonably describe a single individual enough to convince someone else. We know this from when we've tried to set someone up for a date, when we've tried to describe friends that we're introducing to each other. But we have to start somewhere. Many of you are probably already familiar with these. These are called the Big Five. They're the foundations of a lot of horoscopes, a lot of personality tests, things that we use. I'm talking about these, though, from a different use case. Not trying to understand ourselves individually, but to create a personality. Thinking not from the top down, but from the bottom up. So I tried to rename how they might be viewed externally. Neuroticism, your sense of self, can be evidenced in your body language. Somebody being more confident or more nervous. Extroversion, your excitability, how that character might move. Your desire to know more is their interest level. Their cooperation can be how they process that information, and then consciousness, conscientiousness, that impulse control can be how they react with that information. And since I tried to organize everything so that they're a little bit more similar, I try to visualize what is a character on one side and the other. So two polar opposites, Captain America and Larry David. And that helps to try and show how these pieces can go together. There's a ton of incredible work being done in machine learning, in artificial intelligence, but it's not at the point of general understandability. Mu and sigma are not layperson's terms. So the ask is, as you guys are going about, as anybody is going about building pieces, building systems, to think about how all of these can interconnect with each other. We have databases, we have histories, but we don't have a personalized memory with an artificial character. Not something that's reusable and generalized. We have kinematic systems, we have bones, we have something like IK, but without getting an animator, we don't have a way to tell that character to move in a believable fashion. Ultimately, building at a higher level is going to mean some loss of control, and we'll deal with that. We all sort of work with constraints, some more than others. But what we achieve is more because of our self-motivation than it is about our inherent skill sets. And what we can achieve when we coordinate our efforts and work together is so much greater than what we can do when we work alone. So thank you. Let's build something amazing.